was born July 1st, 1896, in Anderson, Indiana. After the separation of my mother and father, my mother brought me to Pendleton. I was 14 months old for my grandmother to look after. And right here, I must tell you something about that lady and about Grandpa. They were both born slaves. My grandmother was always a house servant because she must have been from African royalty, the way she sat and the way she carried herself. And she wasn't very religious. She could neither read nor write, neither could my grandfather. But he brought the family up after the war. Oh, my grandpap was in the Civil War, a soldier in the Civil War. And I'm proud to say that I have his discharge papers, which I dare say that you wouldn't find many of them in the whole United States, especially from a Negro soldier. And he had an old gray mule and a wagon. And he brought all the kids up making stops at Underground Railway until he got to Pendleton, Indiana. And I suppose the government must have given him a little plot of ground because there was a log cabin there. And they lived in this log cabin, and my grandmother cooked out of a big pot that was out there. She could bake and stew and everything else in that pot that was outdoors. This is a Quaker settlement, mainly Quaker settlement. And there are Dunkards there. So the Quakers and the Dunkards helped my granddad build a house around this log cabin, which gave us a great big fireplace made out of boulders, great big boulders. And it was quite a huge fireplace. And a loft upstairs that would keep the loft warm because once those boulders got hot, they stayed hot all winter. See? And it was so lovely to me to be there. I'll tell you, my granddad was a carpenter, a master carpenter. He'd been taught that in slavery. And he always wore bib overalls. And he had a pocket up here that had a long string that had notches in it. And that's what he measured by. And he could build anything. And in the other pocket, he had a juice harp. Well, we had supper at 5 o'clock, you know. And this would be around 6 or 6:30 or something maybe. And Grandma would be sitting there knitting. She was always busy. She said, hands that are not busy and a mind that's not busy are the devil's workshop. She used to say that all the time. So she'd say, Hal? Now, she never called my grandfather William. His last name was Howell, which is named after the owners, the slave owners. She said, Hal, do me the train. He said, do me the train. Well, he'd get this little juice harp, and he always hit it on his hand. Why, I don't know, but he always hit it on his hand. And he put it up to his mouth, he'd go, whoo, 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 you know, and that just tickled me to death. And then he'd go, oh, and grandmother would raise her dress up to the top of her high shoes, and she'd just move her feet. Oh, man. I just rolled on the floor and kick up my heels and everything. It was so lovely. We didn't have money, but we had love. Everybody liked one another. And I went to school there. I was the only little colored boy in school. The only little colored boy in school. And I just sort of belonged, I guess, to the people because they treated me almost like they treated their children. I went in their homes, slept in their homes, ate in their homes, but I couldn't walk to school with a girl. So there was a line of demarcation. And believe me, I was aware of that. I get to school 8 o'clock in the morning, but I got up 5:30 every morning. And that's after I got to be 10, 11 years old. And I go clean up the barber shop, empty the spittoons, God almighty. And I go across the street and sweep the snow off of Johnson's restaurant. And he'd always tell his cook, who were women, to feed me. Well, they give me pancakes up to here and a slice of ham and eggs and stuff. I go to school. Naturally, I go to sleep for a little while. I don't know how ever I got an education, but I got it. I don't know how I got it. They'd have a dance. My grandmother would say to me, "Don't you never bow your head. Boy, don't you never bow your head." And I'd put on my best clothes and go to the dance. They'd be square dancing. I couldn't dance. But somewhere I just motivate over to the punch bowl and pour the punch. They love me. They say, "Come over, pat me," say, "Willie, such and such, such." They just thought I was born to do that. Barbershop was down the stairs, and there was a two-story building. And Duke and his wife lived up there. She had to come down the back steps to go to the outhouse because there was no plumbing. There was no plumbing. And one morning he came down there, and I was polishing the chairs and fooling around. And he said, "Willie, I'm going to kill you." And I said, "What?" And he went to the drawer and got his razor. He said, "I'm going to cut your goddamn head off." And I said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, you said something bad to Nellie. You said something bad to Nellie. I said, "You must be crazy." I said, "I did." And we were going around the chairs. I was ducking him. Well, the man who owned the barbershop, Ray Golder, came in right at that time. And he said, "Hey, what's going on here?" I said, "What's going on here?" And Duke said, "I'm going to kill this nigga. I'm going to kill him." And he said, what's the matter with you?" He said, "What'd you do, Will?" I said, "I didn't do anything." And Duke said, I dreamed he had his hand up my wife's dress." A dream. A dream. I was that near death. A dream. But that was Pendleton. She must have been African royalty because she had a way of telling me things and keeping me straight, Now, on the graduation day, I must tell you this. I graduated in 1915, the only Negro to graduate from Pendleton High School then and up to 1972. See? So the graduation was really something. My picture's up there. Picture now is 76 years old. That's the original picture. And Emma Teague, who took it, also, on that date, took a picture of my grandmother, which you can insert and see. She was 90 years old and sat just like this. You never saw her slouch or anything. She sat just like this all the time. Well, after I graduated, I wanted to leave Pendleton. So the day I was ready to leave, I stood in the doorway with my little satchel and with a straw hat and ready to leave home. My mother, she was in tears. She was just broken up. But my grandmother, she was her real self. And she said, Willie? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you're going to leave this little valley now. This is a nice little quiet valley. Said, you're going out into the world. She said, the world is shameless. A world that has nothing but greed and anger and all the other things she said, I forget now. But they were worth something, what she said. And she said, look, I want to tell you something, boy. She said, I want to tell you something, boy. She said, and you remember this all your life? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, there's fear and greed on all that out there. She said, but don't you go around in the world with your fists all balled up. She said, there can't no goodness get in. That's one most wonderful things that ever been said to me in my life. See, and that's the message I'd like to leave with the world. Unball your fists. When I got in Indianapolis, I worked wherever I could work, but I didn't have any fear of segregation or anything. I didn't really know it real well. So I was going down Ohio Avenue, I think it was Ohio. I'm Meridian Street, one of the two, and I saw this sign, help wanted. So I went in. I didn't think it was anything about black or white in it. I went in. And I was, of course, big. I was 6'1" and weighed about 195 pounds. I was played football, baseball, everything. I was big. So I said, I told my man, I said, what you want? So what you want? I said, I saw that sign in the window. I want a job. And he looked at me, and he left, and he went up the balcony, came down with another man, and they turned me around and around and around, and looked at me, and he said, you know how to run a car, drive a car? I said, yes, I know. I didn't know. I said, yes. They put me in a chauffeur suit. At that time, salesmen would have a chauffeur to drive the car, especially big cars. This was Cadillac Company. And they'd sit in the back, and the driver would sit outside, outside then, and the back was a cabriolet, and you drive, and they would talk about the car, and they dressed me up, and he said, "Oh, you look fine." He said, "You be here Monday morning." So when I was in Pendleton, the Monsinger boys, their father was head of something that belonged to automobiles. Automobiles then were little swayback things, and I'd ride with them and I'd see what they did. Well, that's all the knowledge I had of automobile. But there was an old Negro gentleman who worked there mopping the floors. So he was so proud that I was going to get that job. And I asked him, I said, "What's that?" And he said, "That's the lever, and that's the brake, and that's the such." So Monday morning, I got there early, and the main salesman was there, and the car was standing outside there at the curb. So I stood beside the car, and he came out with a lady all gussied up, she's rich, all gussied up, and they got in the back, and I closed the door, and I got up in front, and he said, "All right, William, let's go." God only knows himself how I got that car started. I don't know. Nobody else knows. But I got it started. I drove down Meridian Street, and it was just running just as fine. Well, out Meridian Street is a park. It's a park, you know, and Meridian goes around there and around the park and continues on, you know. I got this park, I said, I couldn't make it. I went up through that park, man, newspapers were flying, people was running, and knocked over a bench and didn't hit a tree or nothing. I got on the other side and that car stopped itself. Well, I was sitting up there holding the car, holding this thing, and I just knew this man was going to come out there and cuss me or beat me or something. And that fella came out of the car, and he looked at me. I looked at him. He said, "William, you don't know how to drive, do you?" That's right. That's right. You know what happened after that? I joined the Army. I was in the Army in the United States just about, maybe 4 weeks. The rest of the time I spent in Europe, in American Expeditionary Forces in Europe. And in the 351st Field Artillery, 92nd Division, AEF. And I was in there to the end of the war. I remember Armistice Day. That was the first day we ever heard any birds sing. I always remarked on it, "Gee whiz, listen to that bird." Because you never heard a bird. And some detachment, I can't remember what it is now, some general, to make himself big, sent these fellas over at 9 o'clock in the morning, defenseless, and the Germans just mowed them down. Armistice was signed at 11 o'clock in the morning. And I remember the big quad trucks coming back with him, and you could see the feet bouncing out the back of it. And he was court-martialed. That's in history. And he was court-martialed for doing it. Because everybody knew the war was going to be over the next day. Everybody knew this. I was in headquarters company. Of course, we knew maybe before the batteries knew. But it was awful. I never killed anybody. I never saw him. I've seen people get blown up, but I never killed anybody, which I'm glad of. But then when I came back home, I thought, gee whiz, you know what made me join? The bands down in Indianapolis playing, the Yanks are coming, drum tumming, and I got all balled up, and I joined up. When I came back, I had these parades and things. I wasn't in New York, but I had one in Indianapolis. And I thought, my thoughts in joining was that I'll join the Army, things will be better. They said democracy, there would be no more war and all of this. Everybody would be equal and everything. I came back and put a mop in my hand. From then I was an angry man. I was an angry man for a long time. And I had every right to be I had every right to be. I got to be a hater. I got to be, well, I hated all white people. I got to be a real hater. And I worked in a Busy Bee restaurant. And one old man, he was Messenger, I'll remember his name forever. He was president of the bank. he sat at the table, he sat over the side, and he wouldn't let anybody wait on him but me. And I was going to Butler College, and he'd slip me a little money, $2 or something, to help me, along. Well, I had a little bad time in Indianapolis. Going out to Irvington, that's where Butler College was, you ride the Washington Street car. I got on one morning, I had my books, and I sat down, half a seat empty. The white man was sitting there. I sat down, and he just, whoop, and knocked me in the aisle. He said, "Nigga, don't you sit down beside me." Well, I picked up my books. I got them all ready. And I knew the car was going to stop very soon for the next street, They had conductors and motormen and conductors then on street cars, And when I knew about my ready, I hit that guy. I hit him to kill him. His head went through the window. I got off of that streetcar and I ran. I don't know how long I ran or where I ran. And I know I slept on a hay mow all night because I was afraid to go home. I thought they'd be after me. But they didn't. And then in this Busy Bee restaurant, just show you how Pendleton was in me. I was equal. I felt equal. I thought, why are these people doing this to me? Just because I happen to be black. Why are they doing this to me? And I went over to this miners' convention, coal miners' convention there, and this big round table, and I was taking their orders. Well, the newspapers then would print the word nigger in the highlight, and the headlines, same as print prints or anything. But this wasn't in the headlines. And I got around to this man, and I was writing. I said, "What do you like, sir?" And there's a byline, a column said, "Nigger steals bicycle." I got there, and I said, "What do you like, sir?" He looked up at me and he said, "All you niggers steal, don't you, George?" Well, I picked up a water bottle that was on the table. I hit him to kill him. It broke his shoulder blade and everything. At that time, I had to lose my job. My old man messenger saved me from being in jail and everything. But I'll just show you what you have to go through. I had a little band in school. I didn't tell you that. Walker's Wonderful Music Mixers. So I played sax and sang. And I was playing at the Jewish fraternity, the biggest Jewish fraternity, homecoming. And there's a man there down from Chicago. And he said to me, "Lad, do you ever come to Chicago?" I said, "Yes, I got a sister up there." She wasn't my sister, my play sister. And he said, "Well, stop in and see me when I get in." He gave me a card. And I said, "Thank you." And I put my case. I didn't know from nothing. And one day I was home, and I was cleaning my sax, just fooling I cleaned. I saw this card. I showed it to Inez. She's the one who calls it. She said, "You get your ass up and get down there." She said, "You know that's in the State Lake building downtown?" I said, "No." She said, "That's the biggest, all the big agents are." I said, "Agents?" She said, "You get down there." So I went down. I went up there, and the waiting room was full of dressed actors, vaudeville actors and big actors and stuff. And they looked at me like I was a small spot of grease, and the receptionist, she said, "What do you want?" And I said, I want to see Morris Silver. She said, "Mr. Silver doesn't see anybody without you got to write in to see him or something. You just can't see it." I said, "Well, I'm sorry. As far as me, he wanted to see me. I didn't want to see him." And I turned around to go, and Morris Silver walked in the door. And he said, "Hey, lad." He said, "Where you been?" I said, "I've been around." He said, "Well, come on in." And they looked like, you know what. I went there, and he said, picked up a phone, called Remick Music Company. And he said, "Charlie, come over here." And in a few minutes, a Negro walked in. He was head of Remick Music Company. And he said, "Charlie, here's this young man I was been telling you about." And the man said, "Well, where you been?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And he said, "Well, you be over Remick's at 10 o'clock in the morning." And they took me through songs and stuff. And he said he'd do. He's all right, he'd do. Well, make a long story short, and I think in 2 weeks I was in Paris. That's where I got in the show business. I came back to New York. Well, the bug had hit me. Bug had really hit me. So I was lucky. That's all I can say. I was just dead lucky. Will Vaudry said, "Take him over to see Hammerstein." His first name skips Arthur. Take him over there to see Arthur. Over I went to 57th Street, see Arthur Hammerstein. He looked at me, and he said, "Pull off your coat, pull off your shirt." I did. He said, "He's hired." Just like that, he said, "He's hired." So I did this African, well, I don't know what you might call him. He's a warrior, but he was one of the top warriors. See, and I got up on this big drum, and they played it, and I moved to the big drum until the African, he was a white fellow, but he was blacked up, browned up, and greased up, and he comes through. He's really a dancer from Metropolitan Opera, and on that drum, he was terrific. See, and I got Golden Dawn with Archie Leach. You know who Archie Leach is? Cary Grant. and when we were at the party, Peggy and I, for a party, Cary was there, and he told Peggy, he said, "Just think, this guy got more money than I got." What's in the world? But I had a little song to sing with this big body of mine, and a big war stick and everything, and had my face painted. And I came over to this girl who was supposed to have been raised by the Africans, and and I kneeled down beside her, and I said, "To save 1,000 souls, one soul you place apart, a virgin you shall be, taboo, no man shall touch your heart." That's my first show, Golden Dawn. I shall always be grateful and thankful to Ida Anderson for one thing. She taught me how not to act. She says, "When you acting, don't you act. You be yourself." I'll always remember that. we toured, went to Chicago, went to Detroit, and I liked Detroit when I got there because Detroit, more Negroes had businesses that they owned. They own these businesses. And I liked the place, so I fell in love with it. And when the show closed, I stayed in Detroit. I wanted in my heart to be able to be in the mainstream of life, to be just like any white person or anybody else. See, to own a business. And I had dropped the thought of acting. I came out of commerce school, so I was thinking about being somebody. I wanted to be somebody. Understand? So I got in with Al Tobin. He's a lobbyist. He's one of the biggest lobbyists ever been. And he was a womanizer, especially with Negro women. Well, this building, I had a nightclub at Shane and Mack, a beautiful building, two-story building, and basement, a drugstore, and an A&P store, and the whole top floor, I had the club. Beautiful. It was already there. I didn't put it there. Some white people put it there, but they couldn't do any business there. So Al Tobin said, go ahead now, and we'll buy that for you. And I said, I don't want you to buy it for me. I said, if you buy it, it's going to be me, not, I don't want to be your little boy. See, I said, I don't want you to be fronting for me, for you. I want to be Bill Walker. Well, we was drawing up the papers and everything. In the meantime, his wife had the money and told him what to do. Well, she went for me. And some Negro told Al Tobin that I try to call her name, Ann and I were having an affair. Well, it made him angry, and he's a big, powerful man. So he took a contract out on me. But I'm with the Purple Mob. They love me. I'm with them, And so the Purple Mob, one of them called me up and said, Bill, get out of town for a little while. He said, because Tobin can't get a contract from any of us or from the Lickavelli boys in Toledo, but he may get somebody from New York or somebody we don't know, some gunsel we don't know, and it might come blow you away. He said, so you just get out of town for a little while till we get that son of a bitch taken care of, which I did. I came back, but I never got the place. But I opened a ninth hole cafe. Well, everything's going fine. I was paying the police for running, I was paying the police, and everything's going just beautiful. And along come the race riot. The worst race riot that has ever been in the United States of America. It never was in the newspapers correctly or anything. It was all started on Sunday night in my place was packed because I had real chefs way back at that time. Way back then, I was paying $185 a week for my chef. That was top money. And I had lobsters and everything was a la carte. See, and you get champagne, you get wine with your dinner and stuff. And they come and raid me once in a while, but they never find anything. And, That was the setup. Then I'd have to pay off, for doing. That was the setup. That's the politics. So, Sunday night, out in the park, some sailors were out there. Some Negroes. They had these places where you have your food cooked and everything, barbecued and everything. And one of the sailors must have said something to one of the Negro girls, and they took it up, and they started a fight there. And from then on, it said that one of the sailors killed the Negro girl. The riot, that's what started the whole riot in Detroit. And some fool came in there, in my place. Oh, it was I'd say about 9 o'clock. He burst open the big doors. I had front doors. He burst open big doors. He said, Bill Walker, get these white folks out of here. They're going to get all of them, tell them to get out of here. There's race riot. And people left. I didn't get my money from the checks. I didn't get anything. Man, they tore up the place getting out of there. But it was a race riot. That was a riot. The white mob was coming from the main street, led by the police. They got to Brush Street, and the Negroes were banked up at the corner of Brush Street. This big police got out with his foghorn and said, now you boys go on back home now, and everything will be all right. You just go on back home and let us do our job. And one of them said, what is your job? I said, well, we just want to clean up here and such. And one of them said, I can't say what he said. I can't say what he called, but you can imagine. And this guy said, oh, that foghorn now, Jimmy's upstairs at the thing to turn the water down on their heads, and old King, I think, was at the back door with the machine gun, and I was up front, and the Secret Service men were on the phones, and this policeman said, I'll give you boys, I'm going to count 10, and if you boys don't turn around and go back home, I'm not accountable for the circumstances. So, and one of them said another thing, you, F you, and all kinds of things. So he started counting. 1, 2, 3, and I was packed with white guys. Woodard Avenue, good God, coming from Woodard Avenue, packed all the way back. And they had gone up on Dr. Wasdale's porch, and he had a gun, and he killed 2 of them up on his porch. And that kind of broke up the tension for a minute, but didn't mean much, because they went in and demolished Dr. Wasdale's house. He got up to 1, 2. When he got up to 2, the Negroes on that side just parted, just like that. Just parted, just like once they were in the Red Sea. And on their bellies were 8 Negroes with machine guns. When he said 1, they cut loose. That guy with the microphone, he must have went 12 feet in the air. He's hit so many times. And the white fellas were running over one another, trying to get back to Woodard Avenue. And the ground was just covered with bodies. damn few of the Negroes were hit because they cut loose so quick they took them by surprise. And they went back to Woodard Avenue. Pretty soon here come the fire department and the ambulances and the big riot wagons picking up guys and throwing them in there, going back to Woodard Avenue, and the fire department started washing the street, washing the blood. You should see it. Nobody could understand, but what the person saw it. You know the race riot ended? They stood them off. That's the reason they don't want the story told. They beat them. They beat him. That street, I'll never forget in my life. They opened up the things in the streets, you know, the lids, so the water and the blood would go down in there. They beat him. But Detroit was never anything anymore. And my business, they didn't tear it down or nothing, but I could not make a quarter. I couldn't do anything in Detroit, so I sold the place, luckily, and came out here. And see, I got the Screen Guild through Mark Hellinger. All that was done, paid for, done, everything. But I didn't get so much work. I didn't have an agent. So come Christmas time again, and I worked in the post office. I'd work 18 hours a day or something, making some money, because I took my money and put in a restaurant here, and it stole everything that I had in there. I had a tough time in Los Angeles when I came, because the people didn't like me. I came in and got parts that they'd been here years and years and years, and they didn't have any parts, because the reason I got the parts, I'd been on Broadway and I could talk. And these fellows, most they could say was, yes sir, no sir, you know, and open the door. But I could talk, so I got the pictures. The best job I had after the Killers was Bright Leaf, about the Reynolds Tobacco Company. The star was Coop. Yep, Coop. The finest man I've ever shook hands with in my life. He was a fine man, a gentleman from time on. There were three wagons on the stage, one for him, one for the woman who played the lead, what was her name, and one for me. He had a bicycle, put my name on it so I could ride all over the place. At that time, across the street was a restaurant, fine restaurant. And Coop had a table. See, he'd go across there for lunch. He said, come on, Bill, go ahead. I went over there, whether they saw me with Cooper, but they say, yes, come on, Mr. Cooper. And me, he was standing there. And he turned around, he told me, this is Mr. Walker. Understand that? He said, he's a fine actor, he's Mr. Walker. Now, my table, anytime he comes in here, give him my table if there's no other table. But give him my table. Very quiet. He talked very quiet. Oh, they made all sorts of apologies and everything. A man gave me a script one time. Honest to God, you wouldn't believe it. Not a script, he gave me 3 or 4 pages. That's the way they give Negroes. Wouldn't give you a script, give you 3 or 4 pages. On this page was written, "Yes, sir, Captain, boss, sir." I told him what he could do with it. Of course, I didn't get the picture, but I told him what he could do with it. See? Now, another time, I was on a picture, good picture too. This I can't call it name. Not No Way Out, but something like that. I was the prize fighter, retired. I owned the blacksmith shop. I owned the livery stable. I owned everything. Had a place for me to sleep and everything.
That's the other coast.
Understand? And I've had a cocked hat. You know, I drove all the rich people in town. So I was sitting there leaning back against the place, watching them shoot something. It came to me all at once. There were no colored people, little boys and girls running around, no women or no anything running around. And here I was out here all by myself in this town. So now the director was from Indiana. Bless his heart. I can't call his name right now. But I called the AD. I said, tell what's the name? I want to see him when he gets through his shot. He said, sure. He came over, and his chair was sitting next to mine. He hit me on my leg and said, how you feeling? I said, fine. He said, everything all right? I said, no. He said, what? I said, no. He said, what's the matter? I said, who am I sleeping with in this town? He jumped up on the chair. He said, God damn, Jesus, we went crazy. He never thought it, never thought. We broke for lunch, sent a school bus out there with Negroes in it, kids and stuff running up and down the street. But they got me. They got me. Because the first shot afternoon, they got the biggest, fattest colored woman you could find in the world. Put a wash tub out in between the buildings, turned her back to the camera, and she was washing clothes. I said, no way for me to beat you. No way to beat him. They were just so damn prejudiced. And now, location. Have a table out, you know, stars and producers, directors. So, see, I started over one of those tables way out there in the country someplace. I forget where the hell it was. And the AD rushed over to me and said, you eat over here with the boys. I said, what boys? He said, you eat over here with the boys. I said, I'm going to eat here. I'm not going to eat with no boys. I'm no boy. I'm going to eat right here. So the production manager got up and said, Mr. Walker eats here. He told me, you know, with the boys. I had another incident. We were way out here, Warner's Ranch. And they brought me out in a standby car, you know, happened to be a Cadillac. I get up, here's a little assistant there, and I get out, and he said, hi, Bill. I said, hello. I said, where's my dressing room? He said, you dress up the hill there with the boys. And I got a big part of it. You dress up the hill there with the boys. Well, I can't tell you what I said to him, but I put my butt back in the car and told the chauffeur, I said, take me home. About that time, the AD rushed over there and said, "What's all this commotion?" And the director came over here, and I said, "This so-and-so told me to dress up there with the boys. Where's my dressing room? Where's my clothes?" And the director said, "Oh, forget it, Bill, forget it." He said, "Forget it." He said, and he said, "Take Bill to his dressing room." And he said, "Didn't you see his name on the door over there, Bill Walker?" And he said, "Well, I didn't think it was one of them. I didn't think he was one of them." Now you know what it meant.
Well,
So he loses his job. I made a few of them lose their jobs. My impression of the guild wasn't anything called. You mean of the guild? I just knew I was in the guild. I knew I had an agent, and I knew I was getting better money. That's about the only thing I knew. Up comes Amos and Andy. See? Well, most of the Negroes in town didn't like it. All the liberal white folks, they didn't like it. But I stood up for it. I said, that's the only picture's ever been made where a black person is shown in every walk of life. And Kingfish is no more than any other guy that's trying to beat everybody out of the money. He never gets any money. He gets the shit end of the stick all the time. I said, poor Andy, he's just like some big old lovable guy that has some money. He gives some money out for anything. Amos was a fine character. A taxi cab driver. He was a fine character. So I stood up for him. I get a letter from McGill. Let's see who is president now. Then he's dead. He was a nice fellow, I can't call his name, asking me to come to a board meeting. I went up there, and Edward Arnold, he started quizzing me. "Well, why do you stand up for these people?" I told him. He said, "Where you come from?" Such. And I had to give him my life's work. So I said, I like this picture. I like Amos and Andy. I've done some of them. And I said, this is the only chance I've had to play a doctor, a lawyer, or a storekeeper, or detective, head of detective, or something like that. I said, that's the only chance I've had. I said, I enjoy them. So he said, ha, 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 ha. He had a big laugh, you know. He said, this guy's all right. He's all right. He said, I nominate him. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Ronnie said he seconded the motion. I think it was Ronnie. And I was in the guild. I'm on the board. I was all the time harping about the treatment of the Negro. So Walter Pigeon one night said to me, well, Bill, would you be satisfied if all of us went in blackface? And there's a ha, 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 you know. I waited till the ha, 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 ha was over. And I said, that might be a damn good experience for you. If you did go blackface, then you see how I feel. I said, this is no fun job, kid. There's nothing to laugh at. None of you laugh. There's nothing to laugh about. I said, because when you're in your dressing room and then you're in the makeup room, I can't come in the makeup room when you're in there. You go in your dressing room, I don't have a dressing room. Sometimes I have a shiny lean-to over there and stuff. But without me, you couldn't make your picture. I said, without me and without the extras, you couldn't make your damn picture. You get out there by yourself and try to make a picture to see what it looks like. Things like that. And I shut up. I didn't say much. I didn't say much. I thought Jack Dales sat right over there in that red chair, right in his house. And he said to me, he said, Bill, you know what you were to the guild? I said, no. He said, you were our conscience. He said, you stopped a lot of things that would have gone off because you looked so straightforward at the person who was talking. And he was never asleep or anything. You looked so far. And he said, you were so annoyed. He says, show your face. He said, I'd look at you sometime and you look like it's going to explode, but you didn't. He said, that was more effective than if you got up there and raised hell. Ward came up there full of piss and vinegar one night, took out his book. You know, he had a phone direct to the Secret Service or somebody, FBI. Took out his little book and took out a letter out of his pocket. Got all primed up. He said, I just got this letter from New York. The letter was written by Lee Whipper. Lee Whipper was an old Negro actor who was strictly an Uncle Tom. So Ward Bond said, Mr. Whipper names these people. Had Harry Belafonte, Portier, somebody else, and somebody else. And he said, the worst thing is you got the worst communist sitting right there on the board, Bill Walker. Well, boy, you could hear a mouse piss on cotton. It's so quiet. It's so quiet. Jack Dales was chewing all these little pipe, looking at me. Everybody was looking straight at me. The first instinct I had was to jump up. He was standing right next to my, right off my chair. First instinct I had was jump up and hit him in the mouth just as hard as I could hit him, knock his teeth out or something. You know, he's supposed to be a big football player. He and Jake, John, yeah, from USC, you know. He's a big football player. But again, I went back to Grandma. My grandma said, take your time, bide your time. So I told her, I turned around to him, I said, Ward Bond, you named Portier, you named and you named me. I said, now, why would we be a communist? I said, why would I be a communist? I said, it's tough enough just being a nigger. Boy, it was quiet. I don't know who it was, Wendell Courier, who started applauding. The whole house applauded. They got up, and that son of a bitch left, and he'd never been back to another board meeting in his life. The picture was so good, but they left out the part that would have won them an Academy Award. They were going to film it last, understand? It's going to be the last shot in the picture. It was my church. It's supposed to be my church. and I'm on the pulpit, and preaching, and I look at the door, and here comes this little white girl in this door. And all Negroes, down south. And she wanted to stay there. And the woman who was taking care of her at home was in the audience. And she starts to get up, and she looks at me, and I do like that to her. And she sits back down. And little Scout was supposed to wander up there, and she's dressed up in her Sunday go-to-meeting dress, And I hold out her hand, and she comes up the pulpit with me and sings, and I gave out the hymn, and she's the loudest thing you can hear singing is her. The loudest thing you can hear singing is her. And after the benediction is said and everything, why, she goes out, her caretaker takes her out, and she hangs on to me. When she goes out the door and hangs on me, she doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to go, And now, if they showed that, people wouldn't be confused as how does Scout know me? When she runs up and grabs me and says, Reverend So-so, how did she know me? But those guys out at Universal, they thought they'd gone over time and over this and all that, and Greg wanted it done. He was very adamant about it. He wanted this done, see? And he wasn't even in it. But he wanted this done because he knew what it meant. They would have won the Academy Award. A director's got to know something about life. He's got to have lived. He's got to have suffered. That's when you don't find many good actors or actresses today. They've never suffered. They've never been stranded out someplace and couldn't get home or anything. And they've never cooked on the stage a pot of beans or something while they're rehearsing because that's the only way they get in the show. I've rehearsed one show in particular that I remember. Rhythm something. I rehearsed 16 weeks. 16 weeks. And the damn thing only showed 2 times. But now, these kids get a part. The pictures you see, you don't know why they're there. You understand? They don't tell you anything about these people, what makes them tick, why they're there, or anything. Just somebody walks in and grabs a girl and bends her over and shoves his tongue down her throat, and that's it. And I don't call that good acting. I'm sorry, I don't call that good acting. Because I saw one picture where this girl was a drunkard, and she had this little boy that saw this killing done. And one of the best love scenes I've seen on a picture, and she and this fellow, this detective, were this close to one another, and they didn't kiss. But there was so much fire, so warm, so hot at that time. Beautiful scene, and they went, faded out on it. They didn't bring it out. They faded out on it. Beautiful. If this is all, I just want to repeat what my grandmother said. I just want to repeat that to the world. Well, that is, don't go around with your fists all balled up. Can't no goodness get in. That's it.